Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska, Omaha. It was in November of the year 2000 that Nebraska voters said they wanted to make the Defense of Marriage Act, known then as Amendment 416, part of the state constitution. The amendment was sold to the public saying that we want marriage to be between a man and a woman. But there was another part of that amendment that seems to be problematic for some people, especially gay and lesbian families. We, on our show today, are very privileged to have Donna Colley, who is sort of involved in the federal lawsuit that is challenging the Defense of Marriage Amendment. She is also a member of Citizens for Equal Protection, which is a party to that lawsuit. Also with us is from the Nebraska Family Council, Al Riskowski. You can check both of these situations out on the internet. I would say that we have the ACLU Nebraska website, which gives you a little more information on the litigation itself, because the ACLU Nebraska was a party to that. And also, you can check out the Nebraska Family Council website. And we will show this later in the newscast in the show, so in case you want to just jot it down. I'm going to start with Al, because Al is sort of associated with the people who said we need this in Nebraska. Now, not to go over tons of old history, but why did you push it 3 years ago, and why do you feel the voters said this is an amendment we want?
Well, I believe the voters said this is an amendment we want because they wanted to uphold family, did not want it changed. The history of it, just a little bit, is that a couple times there was the process of filing an amendment or a bill to the legislature to try and get it passed through that means, and twice that failed. I believe that the majority of the legislatures were in favor of it, but because of the process, it wasn't able to, it just didn't happen. So it became imperative to just go to the people, and that's part of our prerogative, to go to the people. And a petition was drawn up. Guyla Mills, who was the former executive director of Nebraska Family Council, took that initiative, took some time away from Nebraska Family Council actually, and led that petition drive. And it was successful, not only in the petition, but then it went on to the ballot in the year of 2000 and was passed by over 70% of the voters. So obviously the vast majority of Nebraska voters did agree that they wanted to uphold marriage as it stood.
Now, that was passed as part of the state constitution now, and Donna, I'm reading some news accounts back when this actually passed, I think the night that it was successful. You had concerns and said you didn't know if you would get involved in a lawsuit.
That's right.
But there are two parts, two kind of sentences in this legislation that to gays and lesbians makes it more than simply a ban on gay marriages. Am I reading that right?
You're right. There are 36 other states that have DOMAs. Nebraska, if you look at Lambda's website, Lambda is the group of attorneys that's representing the plaintiffs in this case. Nebraska's in bright red, and the reason Nebraska's in bright red is not just because we're the Huskers and they love Harvey.
Letter? Yeah, I don't know.
It's because our law is totally different. Not only does it say in Nebraska that marriage is between a man and a woman, it also says that a family like mine is totally invalid and can't really use the legislative process the same way as my neighbors can, who are an opposite sex couple, to go down and ask for protections or responsibilities for our family. For example, if I'm killed on the way home from our interview today by a drunk driver, Margot and Grayson, my spouse, and my son can't sue for wrongful death. And there's no point in me going down to the unicameral like I tried to this past year and get legislation passed, because under 416 in Nebraska, I can't get any sort of protection or recognition of my family at all.
Sort of dead in the water.
Exactly. So
we should say that your life partner, Margot, is at least on record in Nebraska, the biological mother.
She really is the biological mother, not just on record.
Well, yeah, but I mean, she bore the child.
Exactly.
It was her egg, so she is on the record as the mother.
Exactly.
And in this state, you cannot be listed as the other parent.
Exactly. So, you mentioned that I wasn't sure I would be involved in a lawsuit. Well, a lot's happened since then,
right,
including the birth of my son. And even though this lawsuit doesn't directly touch on my relationship with my son, obviously When you're in a family relationship, you want all of the family members to have some sort of legal bond to each other. And it's not just for rights. Sometimes I get so tired of hearing everybody talk about all the rights that we want. And when I think about my mother and father, I don't think about all the rights they had. I think of all the responsibilities that they had. And that's what we're also looking for, is I want to be responsible.
Some courts are making other ends of the couple, of a same-sex couple, pay child support in these situations.
And I think I should have to. I mean, Margot and I brought Grayson into this world through our relationship, and we promised to take care of him. He says I'm his mommy, and he thinks of me as his mommy, and my family is his family. And that I could just walk off and not have any obligation toward he or Margot makes no sense. So I don't think anybody in the lawsuit has any disagreement with the idea that marriage is between a man and a woman in Nebraska. That's not the issue. The issue is, shouldn't we be able to go down, just like opposite sex couples who aren't married, they can go down to the legislature and ask for domestic partnership benefits. They could go down and ask for wrongful death benefits. There are a number of things they could ask for. I can ask for them, but under 416, I can never get them.
They can stand in the water. Now, Al, she's saying, and many people who are behind this suit, that law, that amendment to the Constitution, which is two separate sentences, you don't think they're separate but equal. In fact, they're very unequal in the sense that maybe some gays and lesbians, not all, can live with the first part, but the second part they feel just denies them some rights that they should be able to have in their definition of a family. Obviously, you guys kind of say they really kind of belong together, or you wouldn't have put them that way.
Right. Well, I believe it's a larger issue than just even Donna and her situation. When you talk about changing marriage, there is a reason over history and civilizations why we have basically always defined marriage as only between one man and one woman. There is a reason why all of the major religious organizations have said that homosexuality or an attraction to the opposite sex is not moral. There are reasons for this, and it goes well beyond just even Donna's situation. Donna and I we've had lunch together. We've talked. We want to go beyond this being personal as to it's a situation where we're talking about changing the fabric of the country, because the fabric and foundation of a country is marriage, is the family. And when you start tinkering with that, it's a much bigger issue than just Donna or my opinion. You're talking about a foundation on which nations are built. That is the family. And so that is an area that we should tread into very carefully. Just at least in my opinion, the question is not really why should we not. The question is, why should we change this? Why should we change it? What is the compelling reason? What has changed?
Well, let me ask you this, and it's always a little difficult when people are talking kind of apples and oranges. I mean, yours is a tried and true, according to millions of people, argument, because civilizations are founded on this definition of the family. Certainly the major religions of the world, if not 90+% of them, feel that this is it. But let me ask you this. Why did Nebraska go farther than, the nearly 36 other state, city governments, whatever, that decided to have defense of marriage bills or acts? Why did they go farther with the wording to prohibit sort of benefits and that go along with and legal joinings, business joinings possibly, or relationship joinings that might go with a same-sex couple? Why did they go a step farther?
Well, each Nebraska citizen has certain rights and opportunities. Whether you're attracted to an individual of a different sex or you're attracted to the same sex, you have the same rights as a Nebraska citizen or a U.S. citizen to make planning for someone you care very much about. And so two heterosexuals who live together but do not marry can still do a great deal of planning. They can go through the legal process of doing much the same thing that I have.
Powers of attorneys,
exactly,
things like that
are available to you to assure if you want, say, your estate to go to an individual, I can leave my estate to anyone whomsoever I choose. That is my opportunity, that's my privilege with my finances to do that.
Okay, but I asked why you went this step farther than most of the other legislation in the country, in the wording.
Okay, I can't fully answer it in that I'm not in the mind of those who initially instituted this in the state constitution. I can say that the majority of Nebraskans agreed, and that the majority of Nebraskans felt that not only do we want to grant or do we want to change the definition of marriage, we don't really want to recognize domestic partnership and start granting other rights that would automatically happen in a domestic partner relationship. That too, at least from my Judeo-Christian background, is not moral, whether it's heterosexual or same-sex related. It's still not morally appropriate for two people to live together outside of marriage. And so each state has that prerogative to set some moral parameters. Nebraska citizens went through the political process that anyone is able to do. We had to sidetrack, and I say we by the voters of Nebraska. Were sidetracked, could not go through the normal legislative process, and so we went directly to the people. Anyone can do that. If you want to change our state constitution,
Granted, you got
anyone can
enough
do that.
signature. I mean, the people that came before you, you got enough signatures, worked very hard. They did what many of us want to do on a number of issues. Because at the time, given the legislative makeup, maybe they're just not on the same track as we are. And in fact, there are people trying to preserve the right and make it a stronger right for the people to go through the petition process. But we were told, I mean, Guyla Mills sat here on this set 3 years ago and said that no, other than the same-sex marriage, that all other protections that, relationships, agreements, and such, will still be intact. She said that, and I get the feeling that many gays and lesbians feel that that isn't true. Now, the court will decide whether they've been wronged or potentially wronged.
Well, that's not the exact issue that's before the court, and I know it may be
Well,
somewhat.
clear it up for
Okay,
me,
maybe
'cause I
confusing.
refuse to read that brief.
I don't blame
just
you.
too old.
I don't blame you. I'm not getting paid to read it, so I won't read it either. But
She
what-
is an attorney by
Exactly.
trade.
What it's saying is, Al mentioned that in his belief that it would be immoral for two people that are heterosexual to live together in some sort of domestic partnership. The problem with the constitutional amendment is it doesn't say anything about those people. Two heterosexual people that are in a domestic partnership are welcome to go down to the unicameral and ask for benefits, protections, responsibilities for their relationship. It only singles out us. It only singles out those people who are homosexual. It's geared toward us. And the Supreme Court has said when you do that, when you try to make the burden greater on one group of people for no reason whatsoever other than, in the most recent case, somebody's idea of what's moral,
The sodomy
case,
and we'll talk about that.
You can't do that you cannot make the burden. Of course, I can go down and change the Constitution through the petition process. And in Colorado, the issue in the case several years ago, people could have done that, but the court said no, you can't make one set of people, they can just go down to their legislature and deal with an issue, and another set has to go through and enlist all the citizens to come together and amend the Constitution. That's not right. And the lawsuit is just saying, give us the same playing field as everybody else. We want to go back to the way it was. Nobody that I'm aware of in Nebraska has ever tried to propose there be same-sex marriage. I'm not aware of it. I've never tried to have a same-sex marriage. I don't
you
know.
have a partnership allowed by law in the state of Vermont. What is it?
It's called a civil union.
Civil union.
And I mean, we cherish our civil union. One of the things I know people cherish their marriages. I hope they would. My mother and father were married for years and years and would be still, but for his death. And I cherish my civil union, so I know what it means to have an institution that's so important. And I don't have any problem with that. And I don't know if anybody in Nebraska does. What happens is the opposition, and I'm not talking about Al, I'm talking bigger picture, they use marriage as a hot button issue because that causes us to get a lot of emotion involved. If they ask the people of Nebraska, do you think that Donna should be able to control where her Social Security benefits go upon her death? I think most people would say, of course she should. It's her money. She paid into Social Security.
In terms of her offspring or
Margot.
And you can't even adopt in this state. That's made that more. The law has already said in courts that they would not uphold
a second parent adoption.
second parent adoption.
And I think Al is of the belief that 416 would prohibit us from having any sort of adoption. I don't know if that's right or not, and that's not the issue before the court, but obviously to act like things are just fine when I can't have any legal relationship with my son, I don't have any right to family medical leave, they would have to pay 18% inheritance tax if I died on what we owe. There were just a myriad of things that are important to all families, including mine. The difference is Al doesn't, he may have gone to lunch with me, but Al doesn't live in my neighborhood, and he doesn't know us. And I think that was probably part of the problem with the amendment, is people just don't know families like mine.
Let me ask you this. You said that, for instance, you gave the example that your religious and ethical beliefs is that even heterosexual couples should not live together before they're married. However, family law has evolved that if they do, and there's a child that comes out of that relationship, that the man or the woman could be forced to pay child support. And yet there isn't an equal thing out of, yes, they happen to be the same sex perhaps, but I think society and many judges have said, I mean, this has been the evolution of family law, that it's in the best interest of the child that there be child support, that a child have a certain amount of financial support, and also from a public interest is so that the public does not have to pay. So I'm just thinking that that's one kind of evolution. Does it mean that we all think that many people, or even most people, think it's really good to just willy-nilly procreate and live together and not even, from a religious point of view, maintain a modest, very modest and lifestyle before you decide to take a life partner of the opposite sex? But you know what I mean? Things are changing. When they had no-fault divorce laws came in all over the country, the number of divorces increased. The whole family law situation, I mean, it's a little scary for us all still, how families are not the way we thought they should be, from a religious, an ethical, or social point of view. So,
Carol, I agree with you, and that's the very reason that we oppose changing the definition of marriage, because every time you tinker with marriage or the family, it has multiple consequences. One of the concerns that I have, if we can go to, say, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on the sodomy law in Texas, one of the great concerns about that was the majority decision came about saying that even if the majority in a particular state agree that a particular moral is appropriate, and as in Texas, the vast majority obviously voted for this sodomy law, even though they voted for it, we feel we know better as the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're going to throw this out. That was one of the reasons they used. That is of great concern to me. We just came through the July 4th weekend, the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson, who was the initial writer of it, he said, all men are created equal. Well, he laid a foundation when he stated that very sentence, saying that we have a creator, and that in that equality we have inalienable rights. There are certain rights that we have. And if we lose any parameter of morality, if we lose a parameter of morality in realizing there is a creator, there is a God, then who is going to create that parameter of morality? Is the Supreme Court all of a sudden the ultimate determinant as to what is right or wrong in our country?
but that's in the Constitution that we have, and I'm not trying to pick an argument on this particular issue, but we set up a three-branch government, and we set out that this is how it would go. So, figure.
But it was always the state's right to be able to make a determinant that certain laws within our state could be based on morality. We are not assured that we have just unlimited liberty. If you go through the political process, laws are able to go onto the book, and you go to any state, there's all sorts of laws on a book.
Absolutely.
And states have when the United States was set up, states were given great rights within their own. My concern is our entire democratic process is becoming a little unraveled when the U.S. Supreme Court sits back with 9 members and says, we know better than the entire state of Texas on a moral issue. Even though the majority of the people in Texas are in agreement here, I'm just going by principle, not
I
just
know exactly
the
what you
sodomy
say, and
amendment.
it's particularly, I mean, that people feel that states' rights have just been abdicated altogether.
Right.
Don, I'm sure you have a response.
Well,
You're twitching and you're.
I am twitching, you're right.
I saw him.
Well, I think we just keep going back to marriage, 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 and I want to make sure everybody understands we're not asking for marriage. And so this lengthy conversation that we have.
Certainly, to make it clear, though, it is on the agenda of many gays and lesbians and some gay groups. But you
and you know, there may be in
right.
other states.
But this is not the issue.
In Nebraska, I mean, I'm an attorney, and I have a civil union for Vermont, and if I wanted to get an attorney to represent me to say my civil union is valid in Nebraska or to ask for marriage in Nebraska, I know how to do it. A lot of people in Nebraska do. We haven't asked for that. All we want is the ability to go to the unicameral and ask them, would you vote, the democratic process, would you vote to allow us to have some sort of domestic partnership benefits? I don't know what they may be. We'd argue about that like everyone does when they go down to the unicameral. I just want the right to be able to do that. That's all that we're talking about with this lawsuit. And the sodomy case has been blown out of proportion to such extent, it's just hard to believe you can even recognize what they're talking about. 4 of the judges were appointed by Presidents Reagan and President Nixon. These are conservative judges that totally believe in states' rights, totally believe in the principles of the Founding Fathers. Most of these groups that are now so against this decision were fully in support of these judges when they were ruling in their favor. They just don't like it now that they ruled in a way that they think in some way is going to be used for all of these unusual purposes that they point out. I mean, this law, all it says is that in the privacy of your own house, in your own bedroom, 2 consenting adults in non-commercial activity shouldn't expect
In other words,
to
you're
have,
not paying for sex.
Exactly. Shouldn't expect the police to come knocking your door down. Well, now that's been the law in Nebraska since 1978. We haven't had a sodomy law, and the sky hasn't fallen, and the sky isn't going to fall here. It is perfectly reasonable. You know, the idea of privacy in your own home came about because Connecticut actually tried to tell married people that they weren't allowed to use contraceptives. And that's hard to believe. It was within our lifetime that one of the states, their people got together and voted and thought that that neighbors should be able to tell you, even though you're married, if you could use contraceptives. And the Supreme Court said, wait a minute. As Al points out, we've got certain inalienable rights that come from God that you get because you're human. And one of them is to have some space that you have some privacy to, as long as you're engaging in something that is totally private and non-commercial and involving 2 adults. And that's universally accepted. So to blow it into some big controversy, I don't quite understand.
But you know, I understand though that Al's concern and the people, many people that consider themselves very religious people, very faith-based people, I think are concerned that morality is being stripped out of all the laws, and morality. And we could define whose morality is the right morality, and because even different denominations, religions, I mean, contraceptions, you know, not all, let's say, Christian faiths have the exact same opinion on contraception. But I understand that, you know, stripping all our laws of morality is a scary world. This world's gotten complicated, gotten more violent in many people's minds, and that they feel that, you know, the underpinning of sort of civility is morality.
But the issue is being framed wrong by saying that morality is being taken out. If you look at every other law I can think of but the sodomy laws that were in these 13 states, there is some rational basis that the state has those beyond just somebody's personal view of morality. I mean, you know, I may think it's immoral for Al to get a divorce and get remarried, but just because I think that's immoral doesn't mean the government should put that into place as a law. So what the Supreme Court said was there's got to be something beyond someone's personal view of morality before we're going to uphold something. So in the sodomy case, they couldn't find a rational basis for the state knocking down a bedroom door when 2 adult men were engaged in an intimate act. But with these other topics, when you look at prostitution, that's commercial. When you look at drug use, that's commercial. When you look at child abuse, that involves harming a child and the state protecting a child. So there is a state interest in all of those other areas. I can't think of one other law that is based purely on someone's own personal belief of morality. And my guess is Al and I agree on virtually every issue that we'll sit here and talk about. The only thing is he thinks I'm immoral because I live on Blondo with Margot. I don't think that's immoral. Now, does that mean my family should have some sort of detriment that his doesn't have? I don't think so.
The question, I mean, the issue is the Nebraska voters, you know, I mean, it's 50% plus one, said that they want this, and they said it pretty soundly.
Carol,
do you think they understood?
No, I
Or
don't.
do you, you know, both of you answer that
I-
question. Do you think they
I-
understood what those words said?
Well, I'll go back to one thing Margot said that I know.
Everybody does
I'm
that.
sorry.
It's all right,
sorry.
Al. I get that quite
Right.
frequently. Thank
One
goodness
thing Donna
she's
said-
good looking. It would really bother me. So.
My wife would agree with her that if I divorced her and remarried, that would be immoral. I know my wife would agree with that.
I think there's a lot of people that feel that way.
That would agree with that. It's larger than Donna and Margot.
Al, you
Look-
keep saying that.
Well,
but
because
you know
it
what?
is.
In my house, it isn't.
Well,
In
I
my
know
house,
it
I'm
isn't.
worried about Grayson. I'm not worried about
I
your kid.
know it.
I'm worried about mine.
I know you are, but I'm also worried about the fact that I just saw a statistic came 2 days ago across my desk. Homosexual men, if you're practicing, you're 20 years old, there's a high probability by the age of 40 you will be dead.
Carol,
Okay, no, let me
interrupt.
let me throw one more.
Okay, throw it out.
60
We've only got 2 minutes, so
I know.
60% of the new total AIDS cases come just from homosexual men. So we're talking about, again, something larger than just two
Actually,
women
the
sitting in a
newest AIDS
neighborhood.
cases are in the heterosexual community, if you look at the current statistics, and that has nothing to do with this argument. In fact, that's
But I'm
really.
just trying to frame it in a larger area.
It-
that-
but
see,
Al,
because
that
you're
has
affecting many things.
Al,
it does. There,
Yes.
everything
Al,
in
I'm
life.
not a homosexual man, and I don't have
Well,
a
I
disease.
know you're not.
But you're punishing me because of that. That has nothing to do with me or Margot. It also.
Okay, but please answer the question I asked. Do you think the people understood of Nebraska, both of you, very quickly, understood what all those words meant and the ramifications?
I can't answer that.
I mean, do you
can't say
feel
if
they
ever
knew
s-
what they were voting for?
I
and that that's
believe-
what they wanted?
I certainly believe that Nebraska voters realized that they were upholding traditional marriage, and they wanted to uphold that.
Got 30 seconds. Do you think Nebraska voters understood?
Absolutely not.
The
Because
ramifications.
Margot and I meet people every day all across the state in a variety of situations, and I have yet to meet one who thinks that we shouldn't be able to have health insurance, that I shouldn't be able to control my own Social Security benefits, that she shouldn't be able to file for wrongful death. So I don't think they understood it. I don't at all.
Well, I don't know if we've changed anybody's mind, and I don't even know, but we need to give people something to think about, that this is a complicated issue in the psyches of all Americans to some degree or another, or for some reason or another. I want to thank you. I want to tell you to go to unotv.unomaha.edu. You can check out the websites I mentioned earlier to get more information about some organizations we talked about, or to check out the archived version of this show or any of our past shows. I want to thank Donna Colley for joining us, and Al Riskowski, good old South Omaha boy.
Hey,
Good to see you again, Al.
good to see you, Doc.
We'll be
See you.
talking again soon. Have a good one.